Hey everyone, this is Dr. Eric Fields, the psychologist turned weight loss coach. Today's discussion is going to be a bit of a continuation from yesterday's episode. I'm talking more about being food obsessed. And the ironic thing about being food obsessed is that we obsess and think much more about food when we're not eating. And this is not unlike many other kinds of, dare I say, addictions. People who have an alcohol addiction many times don't even revel in the experience of having a nice buzz after the first 10 or 15 minutes of drinking, which is so different from other people that drink socially and that really notice that they're pleasantly buzzed and they're experiencing the euphoric effects of alcohol and they're very present. They're enjoying the experience. And so people with an alcohol addiction, they push past that point, not even noticing what's going on with them until they're really drunk. And even when they're really drunk, they're really not so present, obviously, because they're drunk, but even more than that, because it's so habitual. They do it so often that it doesn't even make that much of an impact on them. And this is true of a lot of drug use disorders. Okay. Let's talk about gambling addiction. Gambling addiction. Again, people with a gambling addiction are often not very present. They're not so focused on the hand of cards that they're playing or the bet that they place. They're already thinking about the next round that they're going to play or the next bet that they're going to place. Let's talk about sex addiction. Soon after a sexual conquest, that person very often is thinking about the next sexual conquest. So they're not even really that present when they're doing the behavior or shortly thereafter. And this is no truer than people with a food addiction. We think about food so much more when we're not eating. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had this experience? You were thinking about a meal you couldn't wait to have. Maybe it was some delicious leftovers from a restaurant meal you had the night before. And you were thinking about how good it was going to be. You couldn't wait to get home to just, dive into this meal. And as you're eating it, you're not even noticing how good it tastes. And more importantly, after the meal, you might even say to yourself, huh, that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. Or maybe a day later, gosh, did I have that delicious meal last night? I don't even really remember eating it. Or some late night snack that you're really craving and you go to town and you're not even present, you're not even really enjoying it in the moment, you don't even remember eating the food that much. It's just like this automatic process. Now compare that with people that are not food obsessed, right? Normal eaters, typical eaters, people that don't have ongoing struggles with weight management. They very well remember their meals and they enjoy the meals and are much more present during the meals while they are eating them so that they're noticing the taste of the food much more. We vacuum the food down so quickly, we don't even really acknowledge the taste of the food, whether or not it's really palatable or, delicious tasting. We're just woofing it down. So Yesterday, I talked about ways to combat food obsessing, which happens in between meals. Another way to attack this problem, right? If we're saying that when you're food obsessed, you're thinking about food a lot in between meals and a very little bit when you're actually eating, to kind of flip flop that to a healthy person's style of eating. Yesterday, we talked about ways of combating those food obsessions. And so today I'm going to talk about increasing your level of awareness when you're actually eating. So basically, thinking more about the meal when you're eating it. Because the problem is this, and we want it to be like this. So next time you eat, I want you to really take a look at what it is you're eating. Before you dive in, just wait a couple seconds and just look at the meal. Observe it. Talk about what's on your plate to yourself. Then I want you to slow down. Stop eating so quickly. Revel in the taste of the food. Take a bite. Let it hit your senses, your taste buds, your sense of smell. Visually take it in. Really slow it down to such a point where it may also, might even look a little amusing to do this, right? But slowing it down to such a degree that you're actually looking at the food on your fork before you're putting it in your mouth. Then, when you take a bite, you're holding it in your mouth for a little bit, getting ready for the taste, starting to get the flavor, and then slowly chewing the food and allowing it to absorb into your body and allowing yourself to experience every sensation that's involved with the eating process and paying attention to it and enjoying it. We don't like rules, right? Rules are not good. But if there was ever going to be a rule, I think this would be the one. The rule should be that you don't allow yourself to think about anything other than that meal when you're eating that meal. And you don't do two things at once. How many times do we cook and eat at the same time? No, that enables mindless eating. You want to sit down with the meal and not be doing anything else, not reading the newspaper, not playing with your phone, not thinking about your workday, what you have to do next. And if you typically eat meals with your family, then I get it that that would be odd to not interact with them, but alternate, interact with your family. And then when it's time to take a bite and focus on the food in that moment. And then you can go back to interacting with your family. And for most of us, that's going to be at most one meal a day, because many times we're not able to eat every meal with our family because we have other things to do. One, if not both spouses are working. So breakfast and lunch is usually done in isolation anyway. And so this is something that you really need to start paying attention to and practicing. Mindful eating, not mindless eating. And again, it's very interesting that as obsessed as we are about food, we don't think about food that much when we're actually eating it. And food very rarely ever lives up to our expectations. Think about that. How often do we think that food is going to be so amazing, right? We're thinking about a meal, we're obsessing about it, we're thinking about what to eat, snacks, what have you. Maybe we saw a delicious treat in the corner and we keep thinking about it, and then we actually have it. And how often does it ever meet our expectations? If you were to ask yourself in the moment, on a scale of 1 to 10, how delicious do you think the snack is going to be? You'd probably be, it's a 10, it's an 11, 12. And then you have the actual snack. And then afterwards, if you ask yourself to rate that snack, you'd probably be like, I think it was a 7. I don't even know because I don't even remember eating it really. I wasn't even paying attention. Maybe it was an 8, maybe it was a 5. I don't even know. But chances are it's never as good as we make it out to be. We overemphasize food. And like I've talked about, it's because of many psychological factors and reasons. But the trick is to not overemphasize food, but to also, especially, not aggrandize it when we're not eating. Have you ever had the experience where you broke up with somebody and the first couple days you're like, oh, I'm so glad I got rid of him. And then a week or 2 weeks go by and you're like, yeah, I'm still definitely glad I broke that off. I miss him a little bit though. And then like several months go by and all of a sudden you bump into him at a store and you're like, ah, I do really miss him. That person, you know, he had some issues, but overall, there were a lot of great things about him. I'm finding it hard to remember why I even broke up with him, and then maybe even get back together with him. And within like a week or maybe 2 weeks, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got back together with this guy. I was totally must have been lost my mind to have even considered going back to him. It's clear as day why I ended the relationship. And so, what does this tell you? It tells you that very often we have an image or idea or false memory, and we act on that. And the problem is it doesn't match reality. And it's very similar to our idea of food. We have this image of what food is. And our image when we're not eating is that food is like the ultimate panacea. It is so pleasurable. It's the most amazing thing in the world. And then when we actually eat, it's never quite as amazing as we thought. So flip flop the food thoughts. Try not to think as much about food during the day. And when you're feeling food urges and cravings and really aggrandizing how awesome you think the food is going to be, remember from yesterday, it is about you needing something in that moment, not feeling fulfilled in some way, or needing to do some other activity to satisfy you. It's not about food. And from today's lesson, pay attention and do think about food when you are actually eating, because that's what a typical eater does. This is Dr. Eric Fields. As always, I wish all of you the best success, and I will have more to say about this at another time for sure. Take care, everyone.